Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Thank you for being with us on the program today. Back with us, Dr. Randy McDonald. He's been a coach and mentor for over 20 years. He is a founding member of the International Association of Coaches. Dr. McDonald is also a certified clinical hypnotherapist and a charter member of the Association for Integrative Psychology. He's a published author. We'll be talking about his book on today's program. It's all about control or lack thereof. Methods to take control of your life that work. His website is holisticmanagement.net. And Dr. Randy McDonald back with us on This Week in America. Randy, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you with us.
I'm great. I'm happy to be back.
There were so many interesting aspects in talking about the book the last time you were here. We wanted to have you back in so many areas where you can really be a benefit to us. But before we get into some of the different aspects and how you learned to be in control of your life, and it literally turned your life around and you're helping others now, let's go back and talk a little bit about the title. And you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can pull up the other show we did, the first show we did with Randy on YouTube as well as iTunes, and learn the fascinating story. But very briefly, this was a book that almost had to be written. It literally woke you up at night and got you to the computer to start writing this book. Talk about the concept.
Well, it literally is all about control. Your life and your health are directly relative to how much control. And we talk about that, how much control you have and how much control you allow others to have over you. And I phrase that very carefully because it is how much control you allow other people to have over you. So I decided that we needed to talk about, as in general population, we needed to talk about control and how much control was being exerted and how much control you were giving up.
And it's fascinating, as you read the book, it's all about control. You find that you are allowing yourself to be controlled in many circumstances. We talked briefly on it last time, but it's a fascinating story. Let's go back to 1977. You go to a retreat, and this retreat really shaped you for the rest of your life. Talk about it. This was a 10-day silent retreat. Pick up the story and then talk about the experience you had there.
Well, it's actually pretty hilarious when you think about the story. First of all, I want to tell you, you have to be pretty dedicated to go to a silent retreat. Most of us don't realize what it's like not being able to communicate for 10 days with someone else. But in this case, the only time you could talk was if you wrote a letter to the lady running the seminar, if you want to call it that, more of a spiritual type of a thing. And her name is Gangaji, and I have her permission to talk about her in any terms I want, but it'll be positive because I love her. But I wrote her a letter, and at the bottom of the letter I said, help. And so she decided to bring me up in the front of the group, and that's the only time you get to talk. We talked about control. And the whole conversation was just hilarious. It was, she said, do you think you have control over your body? Do you think you have control over your parents? Do you think you have control over... And she started listing all of these different things. Did I or did I not have control over? And I said, well, I've been pretty rigidly controlled all of my life, and I'd like to once not be in control. Well, I phrased that a little bit wrong. And the reason I did was because on the way back from the retreat, this was in the Central Valley in Colorado, and we're driving back, going to the Boulder area, and the first thing that happened was there was a landslide, which made us detour all the way around and go up over Highway I-70 to the summit and then down the other side. So I was driving a car that was very reliable. It had always been a great car. I loved it, and it loved me, or at least I thought it did. So the first time I was not in control of the situation as far as the car was concerned was when I had a detour. And the next thing that happened is we get up over the top of the summit, and my dashboard lights up. like a Christmas tree. And I'm going down the mountain, literally with only the steering wheel. I have no power. I can't turn the car on. I keep trying to turn it on. It won't start. And I'm going up and down the hills. And my passenger said to me, don't you want to pull over? I said, no, I know there's a town down at the bottom of the hill, and I want to get there. So we went up the hills, and sometimes as slow as 50, and then down sometimes as slow as 85, and finally get to this little town. And I roll down the freeway, turn left, roll into the filling station. I look up, it's closed. So I said, well, this is one of these modern cars, but I want to look and see if there's anything under the hood. So I asked my passenger to get in the driver's seat, and I popped the hood and said, try the key, and sure enough, it started. Now, I never did it again, and it had never done it before then.
Yeah, I understand you took it to have it looked at, and really they couldn't find anything wrong with it.
Nope, couldn't find anything wrong with it. But the funny note is, as we got back in the car and started on our way back to Boulder, my passenger said, be careful what you ask for. And I said, what are you talking about? You ask not to be in control.
And as soon as you give up control, that's what happens. You're listening to This Week in America. Dr. Randy McDonald, our guest on the program. His book is called It's All About Control or Lack Thereof, Methods to Take Control of Your Life That Work. His website is holisticmanagement.net. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You get all the information and can get information as well at the book at the website, holisticmanagement.net. So that was a real experience for you from start to finish. And I know a couple of things that came out of that, a couple of key words, dominated or dominance in experience. Let's talk about experience and the role that experience plays in being in control or being controlled. And that, you called on a lot of that because when we talked about the childhood last time, but you travel a lot with your mother. You were in a very controlling situation then. Talk about how experience plays a role in whether or not we're in control of the situation.
Well, a lot of the time, our experience tends to lead us down a path that may or may not be real. And we believe that the only thing that we can do is this. And we believe that we're in control of the situation when really the fact of the matter is that something in your past is what's causing you to go down that particular path. So you're not in control. The past is in control of you. So that's where the experience is probably the biggest factor that a lot of us don't realize what's going on about. People just go through their lives and they don't stop to think when they do something or say something how much control someone in their past or some event in their past is having over the current situation, and realize that they can, in fact, affect the outcome.
And I guess you need to realize what that is in the past that's literally holding you back. And once you confront that, you're able to change that, right, and move forward and sort of take that shackle off and move on with your life?
Well, I have a very personal example with my loving wife and myself. There are certain things that happened in my childhood, and there are certain phrases that my mother used to use. And particularly when we first got married, I found that when my wife would say something that sounded similar, I would have a reaction that was directly relative to what my mother said, and it wasn't necessarily relevant to what my wife was saying. So I was allowing my mother to control me even from the past.
Dr. Randy McDonald, our guest on the program, the book, and it's a fascinating book. You'll find out a lot about yourself and, in many cases, be able to change various aspects of your life. The book is called It's All About Control or Lack Thereof, Methods to Take Control of Your Life That Work. The website is holisticmanagement.net. When you were at that conference there, that whole conversation, or a lot of the conversation, you got a tape of it's available in the book, and it's really enlightening. And I think at one point you told her you loved her. I mean, it was an interesting back and forth between the two of you there. That's all available in the book. Right. You talk a lot about learned helplessness, and I'm fascinated by that concept. And let's talk a little bit about that. How common is that, and how do we find ourselves in that situation?
Well, first I'd like to give a brief example of what that really means, and an experiment that was run which will help clarify what I'm talking about. This is a real experiment that I actually ran, and they took some dogs, and they put, of course they did the experiment the right way, a control group, and then one group's subjected to one type of stimulus, and the other group suggested to another type of stimulus. But one group was put into a room, and the floor was electrified, and they couldn't escape the electrified floor. Now, the other group of dogs was put into a floor that was electrified, but there was only a short wall to the other side of the room, which was not electrified. Now, that group of dogs learned how to jump over that wall real quick to get away from the electricity. The other dogs that couldn't get away from it no matter what, when they were put in that same room subsequently, just laid down on the floor and let themselves continually be shocked, because they had learned that they were helpless. They couldn't escape the electrical shock, even though in fact, all they had to do was jump over that wall to get away from it. And that's what happens to us in our lives. We go through a series of events, and we have some experiences that make us believe that we can't escape something. And I hear it a lot in the news about, well, my history, my family, all of these things made me do it. And it's only if a question of them having learned that, false belief, by the way, a false belief that they couldn't change that outcome.
Right.
And then you get other people in the same set of circumstances who change their outcome. They grow up in the same environment and yet somehow manage to be successful. And the question is, why? And that's because they have learned how to take control instead of being subjected to this learned helplessness. And it goes, through your whole life. If you have an experience with, like I was talking about a minute ago with my mother, and my mother, when she always said that certain phrase, was angry at me, then I could continue the rest of my life thinking that my wife was angry at me when she used that phrase, and let myself have a situation where I had learned to be helpless. And in fact, all I had to do was determine that the past did not equal the future.
And you talk in the chapter in the book, and the book is called It's All About Control or Lack Thereof, Methods That Take Control of Your Life That Work. Dr. Randy McDonald, our guest on the program, his website is holisticmanagement.net. You say in there that learning that you can control a situation and taking control of it will actually improve your immune system and your health. So there are a lot of benefits besides just changing the behavior, a lot of other benefits that we can enjoy once we understand and can change the situation, take control of the situation.
Absolutely. Again, they did a series of experiments, and what amazes me is that this is not public knowledge, or doesn't seem to be public knowledge, but you can actually affect your immune system with your attitude. And when you are helpless, it suppresses your immune system. When you're in control, instead of being controlled, it has a positive effect on your immune system. So the T cells, the cells that help you to recover from illnesses and all of those things, directly reflect your attitude. And one of the examples that I use in the book is about people who are older, and when the spouse dies, and it's a phenomenon that we notice in society, but we don't really understand why. And if this message alone gets to 100 people, I'll be happy. If you have an elder parent who has a spouse that dies, get them to the doctor, because the grieving process suppresses the immune system.
I read that in the book, and I read it a couple of times. We've seen situations in the news where someone has died after the spouse has died, and you're thinking that's just a freak occurrence, but we find that it happens actually more than we would like to acknowledge. Dr. Randy McDonald, our guest on the program. The book is called It's All About Control or Lack Thereof, Methods to Take Control of Your Life That Work. His website is holisticmanagement.net. So many things to talk about. A couple minutes left in the program, and we'll have Dr. McDonald back to talk about taking control at work, taking control of relationships, the power of optimism. Looking forward to having that discussion. But as we wrap up today, one thing you talk about, and I think it's so important and maybe a major takeaway from people who are listening to the program, controlling what goes on in your head is probably the most important aspect for all of us. It will play into every aspect of our life. And that's really not overstating it, is it? What goes on between the ears really is going to dictate the quality of life we have.
By George, I think he's got it.
Well, I had a good teacher. I had a good mentor, so that works out well. And it seems like a simple concept, but boy, it's not, is it? We really need to know where we are, how we got there, and what we need to do to turn the corner. And there's so many tips in the book. It's all about control. And it took you a while in your life, too, in the minute or so we have left, before all of this thing started fitting into place. The retreat that we talked about. And in the book, you talk about all the experiences that made you who you are today. But it took you a while to put the pieces together as well. And now you're sharing that with others.
It took me quite a while to put the pieces together. We won't talk about how old I am. But yes, absolutely true, Rick.
And the testimonials are excellent. One, and we're running out of time, but I do want to mention this, is one lady actually said to you, "You saved my life." I mean, the information you have there really can be life-altering. It has to be very rewarding when someone says, "You've really helped shape my life in a positive way."
Absolutely, and I was dumbfounded when that spontaneous. I mean, I know the woman from her work environment, and she told me one day. She said, "You saved my life," and that was a real surprise to me to hear.
Well, the book that did it is called It's All About Control or Lack Thereof, Methods to Take Control of Your Life That Work. The author of the book and our guest on the program has been Dr. Randy McDonald. His website is very simple, holisticmanagement.net. You can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to Dr. McDonald's website. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all around the country. So many different aspects to talk about. I mentioned controlling at work, relationships, affirmations, optimism. We'll talk about on the next program. Dr. McDonald, thank you for being with us on the program. Informative as always, and we look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us.